The ride of your life is daddyhood.
For those of you who cannot wait and love daddyhood, please head over to our Patreon. We have exclusive access to episodes, we have early access to episodes, and we have behind the scenes footage. Head on over there, sign up, be part of the exclusive daddyhood group, and join us over there. Welcome back to Daddyhood. As you all know by now, Season 1, Path to Parenthood. Today, I am joined by Kevin Gibson Weinberger. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome to Daddyhood. Here we go.
Thank you.
We have so much to get into, and I'm really excited to sort of go through the storytelling and the angle of the children and the kids and what they go through and what you've gone through and hear from your experience and pick your brain a little bit. But before we go into that, I'm getting ready for Daddyhood.
Okay.
And I have a dad joke.
Okay.
So bear with me here. Hey, Kevin, where do pens come from?
Pens?
Yes.
I don't know. Where do they come from?
Pennsylvania. Such a bad one.
You got to hit the button.
If I do, here.
What do you call a cow?
It talks.
Oh, it gives you one.
It gives me one. Oh, that's a good one. What do you call a cow that lifts weights?
There you go.
Shredded beef. Had a better one than me. All right. So I guess let's just start by telling us a little bit about, normally I have a bio, but you're going to just do your bio on your own.
Yeah.
Let's just tell me about Kevin.
All right. I grew up in Los Angeles. I'm 24. I was born in the year 2000. And I was born into a family, a house with two dads. Classic for,
I love that you just called that classic.
Classic.
Oh.
Tale as old as time. And yeah, I think I was really lucky to grow up in my household. Just because my dads come from super different backgrounds. And, I think they went through a lot in their upbringing and just being gay men in the 80s and going through the AIDS crisis. And just growing up with them and their diverse backgrounds was a really awesome world to be born into. But yeah, I went to high school here and then I went to college up north and now I'm just living up in Oakland, Bay Area.
Wait, what part?
In Oakland?
I lived in East Bay on Alameda Island for 2 years.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I live in North Oakland.
Okay, cool.
Berkeley border.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I like it there.
It's nice, huh? I love that you called it classic because I can only hope that my child will refer to Jordan and I as classic parents. I think you brought up a great point too. Like your dads had to go through something I can't relate to, and that's the AIDS crisis.
Mm-hmm.
How is that, on top of just having two dads, but also just like having an understanding of what they went through, how they had to navigate not only their relationship, but just safety. Just like, at that time, a lot of people were very aggressive towards the LGBTQ plus community,
mm-hmm.
and especially people, because they didn't understand AIDS and what
mm-hmm.
it was and HIV, and they were not educated properly. How have you navigated that now as their son?
I think it's like less of me navigating it and it's more of me digesting it. I think when you are somebody's kid, like you are the priority.
Mm-hmm.
You, as a kid, you can be stubborn and be like, oh, why do I have to do these things? Or why are my parents so strict? My parents were really protective and I wouldn't say they're helicopter parents, but they're very anxious. And I don't think I ever really understood why that was the case until I started getting older and I started getting context and I just started putting the pieces together that my dad's grew up in a different world than I did and couldn't express themselves because of either familial pressures, societal pressures, just the knowledge that the government won't support them when there's a predominantly there's the HIV AIDS.
Well, the government
kinda-
would have supported me there with marriage equality too. So I think that's
Well,
a
yeah,
fair
that
statement
too.
just to say as a whole.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And can I ask how that affected your process of identity? How did you work through sort of, as you're going through this, having two dads, of like identifying who am I?
I think I'm still kind of figuring out who I am.
Yeah. As we all are.
I think me personally, I'm not super like attached to like my identity at this point in my life. I feel like I'm like, I just have security in knowing that I am who I am, and like I don't like need to like label anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's like something that growing up in a house with two dads, and just for context, one of my dads is his parents came from Austria, and he's my biological father, and his parents immigrated here because of the Holocaust. And then my other father, his family's been here for who knows how long. He's African American, and his family's been in Los Angeles for since his parents moved here.
Yeah.
So I think like on top of the like AIDS epidemic, there's also like the fact that my dad's Black, and him going through that crisis while also being Black, it's a compounding effect. So just like the fact that he went through that is something that I couldn't fathom, and is like an axis of privilege in which I guess I benefit from, that like he like saw the short end of the stick. So I think like that's also like some context that as I've gotten older and more mature, I've been able to like understand like the axes of privilege in which like different people exist under.
Yeah.
And just like seeing that either in like my friends who are queer today, and like how they live their everyday life, and what that's like being like young and queer in in today's day and age, and just like and seeing people today being discriminated, and then fathoming like how my parents were treated, contextualizing things as a kid, because it's normal. You're born into like your family. It's not like you're born into, oh, I have two dads, like this like feels odd, this feels off. It doesn't feel off. It's just like parents.
I love at the beginning that you said, I'm secure enough in my identity right now that I am who I am. And I what I love about your generation is that you guys are not mislabeling yourselves, because immediately, I mislabeled myself. I put myself into a box in which I couldn't remove myself from, and it really affected me, both my mental health, and also just like it was not a good situation to be in. And what I'm seeing with your generation is you're way more patient to label your sexuality, your gender, how you express yourself, your thoughts. You really take in more of the information. And I think that's beautiful. And I think, one thing I would love to know too, just with what's going on in the world right now, especially like your parents are interracial marriage. And obviously there's a lot of hate thrown towards many different communities right now. How do you navigate that? And has there been any instances? And I know you live in California, and there's a privilege in that too, just as far as like diversity goes. But I'm sure that there's been something in your experience and in your short life that you've already experienced where you're like, that's not right. How do you handle that? And how do you take your experiences and help make change?
Yeah. I can't think of anything like recently, but I guess like relating to my parents and our experience, like either traveling together, or just like me being out with my dad, who I'm not like biologically related to, and like the looks that we get, and also just the stigmatized, or like just like racism, and people being like, why is that white baby with this Black man? Like people like I pick up on those things, and I think that's something that like I am like hypersensitive to, because I like grew up that way. And also, and like even my dad wouldn't notice it, because I think he chooses to ignore it because it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But I used to go to Family Week in Province, Pitan. Yeah. And that was
with family equality.
Yeah, with family equality.
Amazing.
So I went there like 3 or 4 years in the summer, and it was just awesome just being there with, you know, similar families. I'm not going to say, you know, they're every family's different. Like sexuality is like not
Right.
like it's important, but it's not like it's not the defining factor.
Right.
Growing up in elementary school is like Kevin's the kid with gay dads. That's his defining factor. We're going to like accept it, but like we don't get like the kids in elementary school, we don't get it, and we're going to like make jokes and we're going to say these things. So I guess like that's how I experienced discrimination, but I wouldn't say it like disadvantaged me.
I do love, because at one point in this conversation you've already said like I have privilege because of that experience. So you're already sort of flipped, in the lens that you're looking through life is like I have the privilege to have watched my 2 gay dads, like dads from different, you know, races come together, and like what an honor I have to like take this information and make the world a better place. I think for how young you are too, it's so insightful and so beautiful.
Yeah, I feel really lucky to be born into my family. I don't know, I guess like America has a lot of downfalls, but I think it also like it gives space for people like my parents to like flourish.
Totally.
So yeah, but I bring up the family week in Provincetown because my dad's met like this couple. I don't remember their name, but they had like 2 younger kids, and one of them was a comedian. I don't remember his name.
Okay.
But maybe he'll hear this and he'll, you know, come forth. But he told me this joke, or I think he has a stand-up comedy bit, and he does it. He calls like traveling with like a kid and as a gay couple, like the WTF triangle.
Yeah.
Where you like check into a hotel or something, and I think he was also
where the person checking you in is just like,
they're just like, or no, it's upside down because short kid. But it's like,
you see their wheels spinning and smoke coming out of their brain.
It's like, what is going on? Why are these 2 guys staying in a room with this kid?
Yeah.
And it's like, I feel like the initial response, like out of confusion, isn't like excitement, where I feel like sometimes like confusion and excitement.
So I love the fact that you brought up family equality, because I'm obsessed with the organization. The CEO, James Black, came on and we had a great conversation. I've been invited to Family Week a couple times. I definitely, it's something I'm going to go to with my family at some point.
P-Town's also just beautiful.
It's where my husband and I met.
Oh, really?
We met in P-Town. Nice. Yeah, so a very special place for us.
Have you been to the Canteen? That was like my favorite restaurant there.
Probably.
Okay.
Yeah, it rained a lot when we were there.
Oh, okay.
That's why I credit us being together, is because we were like, this is going to be fun, beach
bundle
weekend.
up.
And then, it was cold and wet. I would love to know from you, when you first sort of had the conversation with your dads, or your earliest memory of like them explaining, you know, how Kevin became Kevin.
I think I was just told that like there was somebody who birthed me, and then there's somebody who donated the egg, and then that one of my dads is like the person who donated like the sperm.
Yeah.
It's like, it's so simple.
And what terminology did they use? Do they say egg donor? Do they say biological father? Like, how do you guys navigate terms?
Biological. I don't know. I think, biological father.
Okay.
Egg donor for the egg donor.
There's no right or wrong either.
Surrogate.
Like,
I'm just like
curious, because I know like Abby, when I had Dr. Kim, Abby's mom, on too, we just were discussing, and you know, they're careful with what words and terminology they use, and every family is different.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's a right or wrong. I'm just always curious from decisions that my husband and I are going to have to make, like how we communicate with our kids.
I think it really depends on like what your needs are, I guess.
I don't know about that. I would take a step back.
It's for the kid.
Yeah, that's why I'm sort of asking. I want to ask you, as like the kid, what do you like? Was there a part of the process that you were like, maybe I wish I would have been older when I found this out, or did you like the way everything happened, or did you not really think about it much? It just sort of is what it is.
It's just like like you grow up in your world, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not new to you. It just is.
So how did you navigate talking to kids in your class, especially if like at times you may have felt
A lot of it was humor. I think like that's where like my like humorous background spurred from. Like I would just make so many gay dad jokes, and I think it came out of like uncomfortability.
Yeah.
Because like kids would like make jokes back or like say or like ask questions that are like kind of homophobic. Just like asking like, oh, you have two dads, like are they gay? Like are they gay? I'm like, what? Like who has
how else would this work?
like respect to like two dudes who raise a kid and are just best friends, but like
right.
they're probably gay. But yeah, I would just get like ridiculous questions like that. But like I would always respond like, no, they're not gay. Like, no, they're not. Just to mess with them.
Just to like play into it and confuse them even more.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody has to deal with it how they need to deal with it. I mean, it's also at that age too. It's uncomfortable sometimes taking the confrontational route.
Yeah.
And like calling anybody out.
Yeah.
I had that too, where I was part of the problem just because like I just joined in. It was easier to join in than stand up on my own. You know?
Yeah. I do remember like a lot of homophobia in elementary school. I think my middle school friend, I went to a really small middle school in K-Town in high school, and everyone there was really nice and receptive. And I think like, yeah, that was really good. But in elementary school, there's a lot of homophobia just because I think there's just more ignorance.
Yeah.
And kids are just like, they're kids. They're unfiltered.
Totally.
But I remember like coming home one day and like crying because like everyone was like asking me if my parents had sex. And I was like, I don't know. But then
you're like probably.
I was like, I didn't even know probably. I'm like, I don't know what sex is. I don't know anything about that.
Wait, what age is this?
Like before, like probably fourth grade. So
okay.
Like 9.
Yeah, and definitely before sex ed.
Yeah.
Or any type of that.
Any sort of
education.
Like, yeah, or before puberty or anything. It's like,
yeah,
it was like this perversion to like gay sex, like at such a young age. It's like, where are you learning that?
Right.
So yeah, I think like that's something I've had to like digest and unpack, because like when people, as a kid, like you're so malleable, and like even though it's not like, even though I was raised in a house with gay dads, like there's external homophobia, which like I can internalize and which I've had to work through. Yeah. And I think as I've gotten older, you get more time to reflect on that. And I think everyone has internalized homophobia. Actually, I don't know. I think so though. Like regardless of your background.
I hesitate to even say older generation. I think it's getting better.
Yeah.
I think that's a fair statement to say.
Yeah.
I think the homophobia in our country is getting better.
Yeah.
And I think it's getting better because representation is becoming more prominent.
Yeah.
And I think social media is to blame for the help of that. Representation is obviously at an all-time high now just because of social media too. And like, you know, there are cultural deserts in our country and farm towns in middle America where there is not a lot of diversity. And now there is, thanks to Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, all of that.
Yeah.
So I think it's getting better. I think that's a fair statement to say.
And I think like when like queerness can be like a pride point for somebody like me, where like my family is queer and I can like be proud of that. Like that is what combats like that externalized homophobia.
Yeah. Well, I would challenge you and say you can be proud of it now, because it's hard. As someone who's like, you know, came out, you know, married now, the love of my life, and starting a family, it's challenging. There's not a lot of information out there. It's difficult to sort of navigate, and it's isolating. And I couldn't imagine, you know, your fathers doing that at the time that they did it, and also just with all of the things working against them at that time.
Yeah.
So it's something you definitely should be proud of, for sure.
Yeah.
I would love from you, what does the term home mean to you right now? And I know you live up in the North Bay, but like when you hear the word home, what does that mean?
I think it's just like being with my parents. I've been thinking about it a lot recently because I've just.
Are they still here in LA?
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. I'm staying with them.
Yeah.
I guess just wherever I am with them. I feel like home is also like a sense of self too. I think like you have to find home within yourself.
Yeah.
As well as like with your family or your friends, like home is like internal too.
Yeah. I mean, I know I've caught myself many times, like, you know, I'll be, you know, out and be like, hey, I got to run home. And it's like, this is home. And then I'll talk to somebody else and be like, hey, I'm actually flying back home for this. And it's like, that's Illinois. And then I'm going to go visit my family, you know, my home in Colorado. And it's like, home can mean so many different things. And it's definitely the people around you, your family. So I can tell you're just so insightful for, you know, not having a ton of life experience yet, but on the other hand, you sort of have because you've been forced to have that life experience. So I think what I would love to hear, and I think what a lot of our viewers and selfishly me too, just is like how I'm gonna navigate this is, if you were in your parents' position now, your two dads, how would you handle talking to your kid about when would you do it? What preparation would you have? Would you let them come to you? How would you navigate what they had to navigate in conversations with you?
I think that puts a lot of like pressure on it. And I get like you're
pressure on you. Pressure as like on the kid.
Yeah, but also on the parent, like I understand that it's maybe not like, or like your situation isn't like the like average situation, but I think also like that doesn't mean you have to like, and you need to be intentional. And I understand like that's why you're doing the podcast and like hearing from everyone. But I think it's also important to like take a step back and like maybe just let things come more naturally. 'Cause like you are special, but then you're also just like any other parent raising a kid.
Right.
So, and my parents took a really like hands-on approach, and you're asking specifically on like, how would I like explain everything going on?
Or what would your approach be? Cause like, even like, just, I guess like right now where we're at, I don't want to speak on behalf of my husband, but we have had enough conversations to know, like, we are gathering photos of our egg donor. We're gathering photos of our surrogate. We will have all of that information ready, and we're not planning on hiding anything. We're planning on answering all the questions that we possibly can. But we don't have like a game plan per se to be like, at age 6, we're going to tell them this. And at age 7, we're going to say that. We don't have that.
I don't think my parents had one.
Right. Either. We're just going to be like, when they're curious, we'll be here to lead with honesty and truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Perfect.
You already had the answer.
Well, I was just curious about sort of your approach. Like,
I think not overcomplicating it. It's just like, this is
treating it for what it is.
It's like just the birds and the bees talk. It's just like the turkey baster and the
bees and the bees.
I don't know.
Is that
bees
right?
and the bees.
I don't know which one is which, but
I'm not sure.
All right, so let's talk about where you draw your inspiration and your strength from. You know, and it doesn't even have to be your dad's, but just like in the life that you're living right now. You know, where do you look for your strength?
Honestly, a lot of like art really inspires me. Like artists,
beautiful. Just
like the lifestyle. I've been thinking about like their role in society.
Yeah.
And just their role that it like art isn't like creating like a constructive concrete output. Like it is, like it's creating like a form, but it's not like furthering like some sort of built environment, or it's not like directly like helping people, but it is in the way that it like pushes societal boundaries. I mean, some art does. I think other art's all subjective, but I've been thinking a lot about just its role in society.
What's your favorite type of art?
I really like street art.
Graffiti? Or
yeah, I like graffiti. I really like Keith Haring. Like growing up, I loved Keith Haring. I recently went to his exhibit at the Broad, and it was awesome. It was, I think, the biggest Keith Haring.
You into
exhibit.
Banksy?
Huh?
You into Banksy?
Yeah, a little less. I like Banksy, but yeah, he's cool.
Keith Haring's
fantastic.
Awesome.
And just like his impact in like, he was only creating art for like 10 years, and his impact was like so inspirational. And he didn't like build a building for people to live in or like create. Right. And I'm an engineer now. Like I work in engineering. And I've always been interested in the arts, and I like draw a lot and make music, and I've just been like really appreciative of like those artists who like do push the boundaries and like
Yeah.
I think they do. Art is very necessary on that degree.
I mean, I think, drawing the similarities, like pushing the bound, like that's, in my opinion, like what your dads did for somebody like me, just speaking transparently. Like, and I know, my path to coming out was way easier than theirs was, but it was because of, people like your dads that I was able to, document my coming out or have like the opportunity to launch daddyhood and have support and not be able to hide. It's sort of that boldness. So I love that your answer was art. Yeah. It's like art comes in all sorts of forms. So cool. I want to talk about any lessons that you learned through your family dynamic and how, and I think we've already sort of touched on it a little bit just with like you reframing, which I think is so beautiful, of this privilege that you have of the lens that you got to view your fathers in. I think is so cool. But I would just love to hear, straight from you too, just some of the lessons that you could apply to your life.
I mean, like the obvious ones are like, don't hold back who you are, and just like express yourself. I learned like within the context of like my family is like, and within like stereotypes of gay people and gay parents, my dads like are not flamboyant people. They're not like, I think there's like a big stereotype of like gay people being flamboyant or gay people or gay parents like being really flamboyant and like motherly. There's like stereotypes, I feel like, and pressures around that. But my parents are like pretty stoic and like, and like, I think I didn't really understand that until I like understood their background, like which we talked about earlier. But like, I think I learned that like you can't assume anything because of like the sexuality of like whoever it is that you're like interacting with. I don't think I like learned that. I think I've just like, and I think I've never really assumed that, but I think it's just interesting that people will be like, oh, you grew up with two dads, like that's so awesome. I'm like, yeah, it is awesome. Like I love their background and I love, their story and how like they're thriving, but also like they are people and they're like working through like their problems, just like anybody else. And if anything, they've had more obstacles too. People don't really think of, like people will just say, oh, that's so cool. But it's also like hard to do that in a society where it's not normal. Like I am grateful and I do talk about it in a very like prideful and I say like I'm lucky, but also like there have been moments where it's been hard and like that's just the reality. But that's just like any other parenting. It's like people have trauma or people have like past life experiences, and like it's just your responsibility as a parent to like work through that as you're raising your kid, and that's like hard. And I think like kids and like young adults put a lot of pressure on your parents, like my parents so this or my parents not this. It's like they're like working through a lot and working through a lot of trauma, and especially my parents like working through a lot of their trauma, just like with like either losing past partners or etc. I don't want to like display all their information, but like
life's complicated. And I think I sensed your hesitation in the beginning, but what makes so much sense is even marginalized communities have other communities within that community. And I think that's something that was important to me and why I ended up documenting my coming out for Netflix. And I grew up in Illinois, and I remember it was met with a lot of backlash when it first came out. And I was like, the privilege he has to, monetize the queer experience was something I got, but then also just like, why him? He doesn't deserve this, like stuff along that nature. And I remember thinking like, the show and what I was doing was not for LA and New York queer people. It was for all of the queer people in other states in our country, because that's not always represented in media. I think that's an important call out. And to your point of where you were saying around my dads aren't your stereotypical dad. No, your dads weren't what is always portrayed in the media. And I think that's the difference here. Is the media loves to portray gays as gays, and this is the gay that's going to be playing in Will and Grace, and this is the gay here. And
Mitch and Cam from Modern Family.
And it's gay men and gay women too aren't all the same. We handle things differently. We have our own set of beliefs, values, norms. We're all human. And I think like that is important to understand too. And gay is just a small part of me. And it's a small, it's one of my tribes, one of my communities that I belong to. I'm also Christian. Yeah. I'm also an athlete. I'm part of so many different micro communities too that make up the overall human that I am, you know. And I think that's important to call out. And I sort of sensed your hesitation, and I don't think you should at all. Like that is a true and fair statement, because how media portrays certain people and communities is not always accurate.
Yeah. So, I think it's rarely accurate.
Yeah.
But like it's hard to like summarize like a whole demographic into like a character.
For sure. So I have a couple last questions that I want to ask you, and you don't have to answer them.
Okay.
Did you ever have the desire to meet your donor?
Yeah, I've met her.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you currently still have a relationship at all?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we text.
Wow.
She lives in Fresno. She's awesome. She's like a geologist. Her dad's a civil engineer. I studied civil engineering in college. Really random. Didn't know that until I graduated.
Okay.
Yeah. But
when did you seek out a relationship or reach out to her?
Like around when I was 20, so like 4 years ago.
Cool.
And like it just made like I met her and it made so much sense. Like my parents are very like stoic and like mild mannered, and then she's like really like quirky and like weird in like the way that I'm weird, where I like it's like something I have pride in too.
Yeah.
And like just how she, like her mannerisms, it was really awesome meeting her, and she looks a lot like me too. And it was mind blowing, honestly.
How did that process go for you to make the decision to reach out, to have that conversation with your dads? What did they think?
Yeah, I think it's slow. It's a slow process. It's not just like, okay, I'm coming over, we're gonna go. It's like you get dinner, or like we got dinner. You don't have to get dinner, but we got dinner. I like met her in Fresno. Yeah, and it was awesome. Like she shared like her life story, and I shared like my life story, and she was telling me about how when she went to meet my dad's, she was like 18 or I think she was 20, somewhere around there. Yeah. Like 20 to 21. Okay. And she had helped a family before, and she like really loved, you know, helping people who can't have kids. And she was just telling me that like right before she came, she almost got in like a car accident, like a really bad car accident, like where she had to like swerve out of the way, or else she would have like gotten into the pile up. I don't know, just like her sharing that story was like, wow, like I was there kind of. Yeah. And it's just like a little cherry on top. Like she didn't raise me or contribute, like she contributed to my life, but she didn't contribute to like my upbringing. Yeah. And there's like gratitude there on a base level, like an appreciation. Like, okay, like I am from you. Yeah. But like you didn't really like raise me or anything. Mm-hmm. But she's just like so funny. Yeah. It really like made a lot of sense.
And what were your dad's opinions or thoughts of you pursuing this?
I think my biological dad is like supportive, like pretty neutral. And then my other dad, I think he was a little standoffish about it. Especially like, I think that's where like words really matter, like labels. Because like, I think I like offhand referred to her as like my mom, just like, cause it's like like, I don't like, she's obviously not my mom. Like she's awesome, but she's not my mom. She's my biological mother. I don't know. You know, it's like,
the egg donor.
Procedural egg donor. And I could tell that like that bothered my dad. Especially because like, I don't know. I think like it's different for him. Like he like raised me and we don't look alike. Even though in CVS once, this lady said that we look just alike.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I love that like is sticking with you.
Yeah.
Like that one time that they drew that probably is going to be with you forever.
Yeah, she was like, "You guys look." He's like, "Are you guys related?" And we are like, "Kind of."
I love that.
Yeah, it was cool.
How about the surrogate? Did you care
I haven't met her.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think fondly of her. I'm grateful for her, and
yeah, of
I've been thinking about her recently, just because like I want to like say thank you. Like she did that labor,
right?
And I'm here because of it. I need to like thank her.
These women are incredible. I'll say that as like somebody who's going through this process right now. For somebody to be there as an extension of your family and to give you that gift of life is really cool.
Yeah,
it's beautiful.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question?
Of course, go for it, please.
And I don't know if like you can talk about this or whatever, but I'm curious because I've been thinking a lot about the NFL and football, because I was reading up on you a little bit before, and you were like involved in the NFL.
Yep.
And I've been thinking a lot about like the NFL's relationship to like American culture, and how like some teams have like problematic mascots, and just like the culture that it breeds feels like very heterosexual, masculine, like core American.
Totally.
And I think like it really like provides that like pure American escapism, and it's like a modern day Gladiators in a way.
100%.
Yeah. And like while the NFL is getting better, I don't watch football personally, but I was reading up about how the NFL is like making regulations on like hits and how you can't like hit people.
Yep.
Like they're making more regulations.
Rule changes.
Yep. And like they're making it safer, but I've still been observing like this American affinity towards it, and just how like the culture that it breeds.
Yeah.
And like I'm sure you weren't out while you were in the NFL, and I'm sure there was a lot of homophobia there. I'm just making assumptions.
And all your assumptions are accurate.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess like that football speaks for a lot of Americans. And it is something that like a lot of Americans like hold really close to their identity.
Yeah.
Which I personally don't really understand, but I've never really connected with football.
Yeah.
But I guess like I'm curious to hear your thoughts on football and being gay in football.
Yeah. So my story with football is really interesting because I came out, I went and entered the draft the same year that Michael Sam did. So Michael Sam was the first openly gay player to declare, like it was known he made out with his boyfriend or kissed his boyfriend when he was getting drafted, and like they zoomed in on it, and there was a lot of homophobia. What that should have done was inspire me to come out and join him, right? And in fact, what happened was I went to a different locker room, I went to a different team, and the homophobia was very real. It was like all support and love on TV. When players got on camera, doesn't matter, we love them, all this. But as soon as those cameras and mics went off, it was bad and dark. And it drove me into the closet even further. And that culture that you're describing, it definitely starts at the top. You know, until coaches will hold players accountable. I mean, coaches partake in this. Just speaking bluntly, coaches are problematic and say some really messed up stuff to a lot of different people. And it's not just homophobia, it's racism. There's a lot of little nuances. Football specifically, with the rare cases of one or two, you're sort of invincible. You can't touch it. It's an American classic. It doesn't matter like if they make those mistakes or they're problematic in a certain way. Like they get to that shield. And look, I love the NFL. I'm working with them. I spoke at a panel at Super Bowl with Paramount, and they're working with GLAAD, and they're trying their best. They're trying to change a culture, and football is ingrained in America so deeply. It's going to take a long time, and it's a slow change. Do I have faith that it'll get there? Yes. I think there's one player right now that's active on an NFL roster that has two moms, so that's sort of cool. Cool. There's no longer there's no gay out gay players. I'm assuming there are some gay players out there. It's going to take a big name to come out. It's going to take a big, bold leader that has a multi-million-dollar contract to say, I'm gay. And I'm not going anywhere. Because I think that will be the change that's needed to sort of spark the shift.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's hard. The modern day gladiator, people love the risk that they're watching on display.
Yeah, football, I think like there's so much, like it, to me, football is so trivial because it's just like sports, but like the stakes are so huge, and I understand like people really care about it.
Totally.
But I think like since it's such a big American institution, like addressing that microcosm and like what happens like within the NFL and within the teams is like really important.
It is, and it's important just as like all of our culture, because if you look, female sports is way ahead of male sports. Just like representation in the WNBA, representation in softball, soccer, is really high for our queer community. And when you look at male sports, you know, it's getting there, but like gymnastics is leading, soccer is leading, baseball, the big three, which is baseball, basketball, football, and at least in America, I could say that's a big three. It's not that, like, you don't have that representation. So long ways to go.
Yeah.
But it's I have a good feeling your generation is gonna be making a pretty big change and shift in that.
Yeah.
So
as
that's
long as
exciting.
we get off TikTok a little.
Well, you know, social media, have a love-hate. It can helps representation, but also can hurt at times too.
Yeah. Totally.
Amazing. Well, we ask all of our guests. I mean, you've already left us with so much, but leave us with a piece of advice, some words of wisdom. Could be a poem, could be a saying. You know, what's on your heart?
I think like something I really appreciate that my dad did, or both of my dads did actually, is like story time before I went to bed.
Yeah.
And it was just like every night, or not every night, but it was like most nights, and it was just like off the dome, like.
Oh, they're just creating stories.
Like one of my dads was like really creative, and he would like create new stories like about like green blobs, or like a squirrel that was like mischievous, or like these like dogs named Carrie and Bowser, kind of like Kevin and Bill, like and or like he would just like have like a fake news channel and do that. I don't know. And then my other dad would do like he had one story, it was called Bark, 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 and Bark, 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 which were 3 dogs.
Yeah.
And they were just dogs, and he would talk about, I don't know. I just think like story time's good. Like it's good for you too, you know? It's like at the end of the day, you can just like be creative and just tell. It doesn't matter what the story is about.
But it's memories that's lasted with you forever.
Yeah, definitely. I think like just in terms of parenthood.
Yeah.
Like the story time was like always like something that like put a smile on my face before I went to bed. I think that's awesome. Yeah.
I love it. Story time.
Yeah, story time.
Bonding time.
And share your experience. Like,
yep.
Sometimes it's hard for me to get my parents to talk about their experiences. That could just be them and an issue I have with them. But I think like I think it's important to share your experience and your story and like be vulnerable.
Yep.
And I think like just teaching vulnerability, especially, just teaching vulnerability, I think like would change a lot.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. This is so insightful, and I appreciate it.
The ride of your life is daddyhood.